What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another fantasy football video. This one we're going to be talking about opportunity versus ability, and that's a question that we don't really think about too much when we're drafting. We kind of just take guys we like, and in this video we're going to be talking about which one we should be weighting more or less depending on where we are in the draft. So I'm going to walk you through my logic. If you guys have a different logic, let me know in the comments section. I love to have conversations with you guys, but this is how I think about it. So first two and three rounds are what I call like the early picks. That's where the elite talent is. And basically you're kind of getting both most of the time. You're getting opportunity and ability. So I'm not going to talk too much about these first couple rounds because you don't have to pick. I mean, the debate is opportunity versus ability. Well, if a guy has opportunity and ability, that's why he's going in the first few rounds. Obviously, you take him. Obviously, we're looking for guys that are great and are in spots where they're going to have a ton of opportunity and quality opportunity. So the only thing I'm going to talk about is where we go wrong in these first couple rounds. So generally speaking, as I've shown you in other videos, the success rate in the first 3 to 4 rounds is much higher than all the other rounds, right? It's hovering around 70 to 80% in the first 2 rounds, and then the next 2 rounds is more like 60 to 80% range. There is a dip off in the 3rd round for some reason. And again, success rate, you can watch a previous video that I've done. I'll link that in the description. Just talking about how I calculated success by round, essentially just seeing how many start-worthy options over the last 5 years have been drafted in different rounds. But first 4 rounds, or I guess really the first 2 rounds, you're getting opportunity and ability. So I'm going to talk about specifically the first 2 rounds where we go wrong. So when we look at busts, we'll look at last year just because that's what's freshest in our minds. The 2 that come to mind for me are Gurley and Hopkins. Now there were others, but Gurley and Hopkins were consensus first round picks. Maybe you didn't take them in the first round, but ADP wise, they were going in the first round. And those were probably the 2 biggest busts in the first round. I believe Lamar Miller was going in the first, but maybe later in the first. But there were a lot of people being taken after Gurley that probably shouldn't have been. And I'm not going to say that some of this wasn't like my doing. I mean, I had Gurley ranked really highly, but there's reasons that we shouldn't have been doing that. So where do we go wrong? Well, essentially for Gurley and Hopkins, we overweighted their ability, right? I'm not going to sit here and say Gurley and Hopkins are not good players. I believe that Hopkins is an elite wide receiver. I believe Gurley is an elite running back. It's their situation that they were being put into. No one can deny their ability, but the opportunity wasn't there. And when you're talking about a first round pick, you need to be 100% confident on both. We're looking at Odell, we're looking at Antonio, we're looking at Julio. We can be 100% confident that they're going to have the opportunity and the ability. We couldn't say that about Gurley and Hopkins last year. Gurley's a good running back. But look at who his quarterback was. Look at what his offense was doing. Do you really want a running back on a team that's relying on Goff, Kenny Britt, and Tavon Austin? Now, this was last year. Obviously, Britt's gone. Goff's another year into the system, but I think Goff's a bust. I've said that from day one. I mean, look at the receiving options. Teams were able to stack the box. We looked at the previous year for Gurley, and although he started off hot, he kind of tailed off towards the end. And it checked the box for all the things we should be avoiding for a running back. Not a super elite pass catcher, not on a high volume offense. I mean, they were by far the worst scoring offense in the league. Doesn't have a good quarterback, doesn't have good receivers on his team. All we said was, oh, he's going to get carries. Well, yeah, he got the carries, but they're not going to be efficient. You really think that they're going to be efficient carries when the defense is like, okay, they have one good player? No, they're not going to be efficient carries. Then you go over to Hopkins. No one can deny he's an elite wide receiver. He's got the ability. The opportunity wasn't there last year. Look at his quarterback. Brock Osweiler was his quarterback. Could Randy Moss get 1,000 yards with Brock? I'm not sure. I'm not sure people can get 1,000 yards with Brock. I mean, he's just so bad. Such a terrible quarterback. So why were we taking him in the first round? Why were we taking the number 1 from Brock Osweiler in the first round? I just, when I look back at it, I just don't understand it. So that's what we need to think about. We need to think about For wide receiver, who's their quarterback? Who are the people competing with them for targets? Do they have the opportunity? That's what we're looking at in the first couple rounds. Which one do you weight higher? Really, if you're in the first 2 rounds, you should weight both. If the guy doesn't have both, you shouldn't be drafting him. That's my take on the first 2 rounds. Then you kind of get to the middle rounds, and that's where things kind of change. And it's more the talent that kind of changes. So guys no longer have the ability and the opportunity, so we have to pick one. And the one that we pick in the middle rounds is opportunity. Now, can you choose ability for upside? Yeah. You can choose a guy that's a stud, and in the right circumstance, he's a wide receiver, running back 1. But I choose to pick opportunity because I don't want, and you look at a video we put out prior, I don't want to just maximize my team's upside, but have a super low floor. And when I am looking for upside early, again, I'm looking for floors early and everything early. But when I'm looking for rounds 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, when all those picks, I'm maxing out my upside, like you'll see in a second, I'm only ability in the later rounds, you need some sort of floor. And I think you build your floor with those middle round picks. So Landry, Golden Tate, Crabtree, Fitz, guys like that, where I know, unless there's an injury, and I'm not predicting injuries in middle rounds, so you kind of throw that out the window unless they're like a Sammy Watkins, where that's a super high risk play. But regardless of injury, if one of those guys has even a bad year, I'm still getting points from him. And I don't want to just take a bunch of risk. I want guys where I'm going to get points for. Crabtree, Larry Fitz, DeMarco, T.Y., Deshaun, guys like that. I'm not saying specifically those guys, because some of those guys are going a little earlier, some of those guys are going later. I'm saying guys like that. Guys who you look at it, in the past few years, they've done it. Those are the guys I want. And those are the guys who sometimes get overlooked. Crabtree, Fitz, Deshaun, they get overlooked because we're saying, oh, well, you know, he's never going to get me 1,500 yards. You know what? A lot of guys aren't going to get you 1,500 yards. So when you're sitting here trying to draft some stud rookie and be like, oh, well, the sky's the limit with him. Well, you know what? I am fine with Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Crabtree because I know they're going to get me points. And when I look at studies at the end of the year that I do, and on average 50% of your team that you drafted is dropped, and a lot of time it's your 3rd and your 5th round pick, you know what? If I can just get guys in those middle rounds that I know are just going to be wide receiver 3s and 4s, and I can kill the first rounds, and I can kill it on at least 1 or 2 late round flyers, my team's going to look better. But if I'm being stupid in those middle rounds, and I'm looking for guys that might just be super good, but also might also get 50 targets this year, it's just not worth doing. So middle rounds, for me, it's opportunity over ability. Where does that flip? Right when we go to the late rounds. Biggest consensus in the industry is that you should be taking guys with super high upside and super low floors in the late rounds, and I 100% agree with that. You need to be shooting for the stars in these late rounds. You're not taking guys in the late rounds that don't have a ceiling. If a guy's name is Robert Kelly, okay, that's basically who I'm talking about. It's guys like that. Guys that you look at and you're like, yeah, he could be a flex. No, then don't draft him. If his upside is flex, don't draft him. You're drafting the Jamal Williams, the Devonta Parker. You're drafting the Joe Mixons was later. Now he's going to be super early because for some reason people weren't drafting him early already. But it's guys like that. Guys like Marlon Mack. Guys like Kareem Hunt. Guys like Donta Foreman. Guys like that. Who, yes, you could drop them in week 4. But it doesn't matter because it's your 12th round pick. It does not matter if you drop him. Honestly, it's better. It is better to have a guy who you can easily drop than a guy who's getting like 4 for 50. A guy who's like getting you 9 points or 4 for 50 and then he goes 4 for 30 and then he goes 5 for 20. And it's like he's getting you points. So you want him on your roster because you think he's going to break out, but he's not going to break out. That's his role in the offense is 4 for 40, 4 for 45, 4 for 50. Yeah, he's going to get points. But the best you can do is throw him in the flex and hope for a touchdown some weeks. Those are the guys that are hardest to drop because you're seeing production, and it's hard to add a guy where you see one good week and then a couple of duds. What you want are guys who, you know what, they could post a couple zeros to start the year. But you know what, you can drop them for that flyer, that really, really high flyer that we're talking about spending your first claim on, like first overall claim. It's tough to drop the guys who are just getting a mediocre points. That's just my philosophy there. But also, this next thing I'm going to talk about. Look at the screen right now. Most common players on ESPN Fantasy Championships. We're going to throw out Matt Bryant because kickers don't matter, and it was essentially, I haven't looked back at it, but I'm just going to guess that they scored a lot of points in the final 2 weeks, and it's basically every year it's whatever kicker ended up getting like 15 to 20 points in the final week. If a couple kickers weren't in that average, they're going to be in a lot of championship weeks. Yes, he was on a great team, but just you draft a kicker in the last round. Just trust me, it's what you do. So other than looking at the kicker on this, what do we see? Basically, it's a couple guys were drafted early. David Johnson, Bell, McCoy, you kind of figured they were going to be on a lot of championship teams. But who are the other guys? I'm not going to talk about Rodgers. Rodgers just went off at the end of the year, and that's just going to happen. There's going to be a quarterback. There's going to be a kicker on these lists. I don't advocate taking quarterbacks early. If it works out for you, that's great. I just don't advocate for that. But who are the other guys in this list? It's Davante Adams, it's Ty Montgomery, it's Jordan Howard, and it's Robert Kelly. Howard was the only person being drafted. I don't remember exactly where he was going, but it was literally like end of the draft, like 14th, 15th round, if he was even drafted in your league at all. That was the only guy on average being drafted last year. So, can you bomb your late round picks? Yeah. And that's basically what I'm trying to get at. You can bomb all your late round picks and then pick up a Jordan Howard on free agency. Pick up a Davante Adams of last year. Like, you can pick these guys up every single year. It happens. So, you want super high upside because these guys were on these championship teams, and you could have theoretically had all of them on your team because they were free and they were going really late in drafts. What else do you look at? The age. Look at the age of the players in this list. David Johnson, 25. Lev Bell, 25. Davante Adams, 24. Ty Montgomery, 24. Jordan Howard, 22. Robert Kelly, 24. It's only McCoy. When you're talking about a skill position player on this list, so 8 of the 10 players, 7 of the 10 of them were 25 or under. It was McCoy at age 28. That was the one older player. Yes, it was the kicker and the quarterback, but I'm talking about the skill position players were all young. So when you look at Darren's article that he's going to write, when you look at the video, I think he's going to post that video about aging wide receivers and the value they have in them. Absolutely. There is value in aging wide receivers in the middle rounds, not the late rounds. You don't take aging wide receivers in the late rounds. You can take them early because remember, guys can be Jordy Nelson and be like, I don't remember what he finished last year. I believe it depended on your scoring format. Could have even finished first. But he was like top 3 in like all scoring formats, I believe. And he was aging. And Brandon Marshall's getting up there in age. But what was it, 2 years ago? He did great. Early and middle rounds, you can take older guys, not late rounds. If a guy's old and going late, he just doesn't. He just doesn't provide you the value. He doesn't win you leagues. These are guys that won leagues. Most common players on championship teams. That's what we're trying to build. Remember, you hear me say it all the time with like handcuffs and stuff. We're not trying to build a 3rd place team. We're not trying to build a 4th place team. We're trying to build a 1st place team. So when we do studies at the end of the year and we look at championship teams, and all these guys are under 25 years old, and I throw in running back stats of the last 15, 16 years into IBM Watson, and it tells me that 24 years old is the #1 age you're looking at for a breakout wide receiver year, or breakout running back year. When all of this data points to 24, 25 years old, well, maybe we should be looking at guys that are around that age. So when I'm saying late round picks, it's not opportunity. We had absolutely no idea. Well, Robert Kelly you could have predicted because I told you Matt Jones last year was the worst starting running back in the league. I think that's now not Le'Veon Bell. It's now LeGarrette Blount. If Robert Kelly doesn't start, if it's Robert Kelly starting, then I think Robert Kelly is now the worst starting running back in the league. But when we look at these lists, how could we really predict Jordan Howard? I mean, like, guys were really down on Langford, but it was Langford, it was, Kareem Casey, I don't remember his first name. Casey guy, it was Howard, it was like all of them. And You can't predict this kind of stuff. You can't predict Devonta Adams is going to be on this list. The guy stunk going into last year. You cannot predict Ty Montgomery. Are you kidding? If you seriously predicted Ty Montgomery in the beginning of the year, that's what I'm talking about. We have no idea what the opportunity of some of these guys are going to be going into the year. We don't even know the opportunity of some of these middle round picks. But we can try and predict the middle round picks opportunity-wise. We cannot predict these late round guys. We can't predict Marlon Mack. We can't predict Foreman. We can't predict Jamal Williams. We cannot predict the roles that these guys are going to have. Definitely not right now. I mean, it's June 5th right now when I'm recording this. So really all I'm trying to say is right now it is nearly impossible for us to predict the opportunity. So we have to lean on the only thing that we do know. And we don't even really know that well, but at least the one thing we sort of know is ability. So that is what I'm saying for the late rounds. In summary, early rounds, you got to have both. So first, second, third round, you got to be looking for a guy that's got ability and opportunity. The middle rounds is where you have to lean on their opportunity, not as much their ability, as long as they're relatively secure in their role. We just need guys that are going to put up points. And the later rounds are where you take the flyer on, throw opportunity out the window, because everyone theoretically, even if they're back in the depth chart, has the opportunity if people get hurt, if they have the ability. If they are a great talent, the opportunity will come. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you are new. If you did not enjoy it, hit that dislike button and tell me why in the comment section below. On the screen, you can hit the subscribe. You can also check out our website with the premium rankings. You can check out a previous video we've